Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about a company that I think has one of the largest moats I've ever seen. This company is Vail Resorts. If you aren't familiar with them, they're one of the largest ski and mountain resort companies in the world. They own and operate 37 different mountain resorts in the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, Rockies, Tahoe, Pacific Northwest, Australia, and now Switzerland after their recent majority investment in Andermatt Sedrun Sport. They own and operate resorts that are world-renowned, such as Vail, Whistler Blackcomb, Park City, Breckenridge, and many more. The largest competitor is Icon, which is a privately held company and owns a significant amount of mountains in the Rockies that competes directly with Vail for their offerings. Now, the reason I think they have a huge moat is due to the fact that they own mountains. At this point in time, it is highly unlikely new mountain resorts will open. Most land is now owned by multiple parties or federally protected, making it almost impossible to open up a new resort. This restricts the competition to being only the current mountains that are up and operating. And Vail has acquired a ton of resorts and is continuously expanding more and more as they come up for sale. You can't really compete with Vail unless you have $1 billion plus in cash to go buy a mountain, and then you still only own one mountain. Compared to the 37 mountains that Vail owns, it would be very difficult to build another business the size of Vail anytime soon. Now, I will note here, Icon does operate and own 14 mountains, but that's less than half the mountains owned and operated by Vail. There are a few notable mountains in the US though that are not owned by either Vail or Icon, and those are Telluride, Aspen, and Jackson Hole. However, these highly desirable mountains are actually available to pass holders of the Icon and Epic Pass for limited amounts of trips. Both parties actually go out and sign agreements with other mountains they do not own to offer limited access to their pass holders. Now, there are definitely a few downsides to the business that need to be discussed before we jump over into the DCF. The first is the cost of labor. We've seen rising wages lately, and this has impacted Vail already. In 2021, they announced they were increasing their minimum wage to $15 an hour for all employees, and that was actually very short-lived. In March of 2022, they announced they're going to be increasing minimum wage to $20 per hour for all employees. The reason this is a big deal is a significant portion of their staff are actually paid minimum wage. They employ a majority of their workers on the mountains to operate lifts, scan tickets, prepare food in the dining halls, teach classes, make snow, patrol the mountain, etc. So basically any increase or pressure on minimum wage will impact most of Vail's employees, thus rising their costs. Without enough employees, the mountain simply can't operate. So they have to kind of pay this higher wage to attract people to actually come for the season and work on their resorts. Now, the second thing to hit on is employee housing. If you're a seasonal worker moving to a resort town to work on the mountain, $20 an hour does not go far and won't cover market rent for the season. So to combat this, Vail actually offers subsidized housing for employees. They recently announced investments in housing in Park City, Whistler, Vail, and Okemo. If they can't continue to provide housing for employees, then they won't really have employees, and to purchase housing in the most desirable resort towns is not exactly cheap. And last thing I want to hit on before we jump into the DCF is it's a very capital intensive business. They have to continually upgrade and maintain equipment on the mountains, which is expensive, and this isn't cheap. So now that we've covered these things, let's hop into the DCF and see if they're priced reasonably or not. One thing to note is that their fiscal year ends in July. So for 2022, they've already reported 2 quarters of results and seen an impressive 33% revenue growth. However, something to note is this is compared to a prior year that was heavily impacted by COVID with mountain closures, limited dining once the mountains were reopened. So a lot of things going into their year-over-year comp. But so for revenue for 2022 full year growth, I'm actually using what we've seen through 6 months. So for future years, I've dropped it down a little bit to be in line with historical growth rates, but we do see this large jump in 2022 based off of the first 6 months. This is taking revenue from 1.9 billion all the way to 7.3 billion in 2032. I think this is reasonable as they continue purchasing more resorts and they have a lot of pricing power with their prices over time. Now, the next big thing to hit on is COGS. We have COGS getting worse for all segments. Mountain and lodging services is going from 58% of revenue to 63% of revenue, representing a continued increase in wages. The next big one is lodging and retail, going from 44 to 46% over the next decade. over the next decade. And the last thing to hit on is capital expenditures. We actually have it going back to historical levels. It looks like they decreased it through COVID. So this is gonna have to go back up to keep the mountains in tip-top shape. And this gets us a valuation between 10 and $11 billion, which is pretty spot on, as their current market cap is 10.6. I really like Vail and the fact that the business model can't be replicated. I think the hard thing is the rising cost of labor and keeping mountains staffed. I think those will be problems in the future. I don't think the skiing industry is going anywhere anytime soon, so I don't believe demand will drop off for their services. I would love to see a pullback in the stock price in maybe the off season and maybe look to enter a position if they can actually close out the season strong. But as always, thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them below.